right now, like literally as you listen to this, your computer might be compiling a pretty detailed, minute-by-minute behavioral profile of your workday.
Yeah, it's honestly a bit wild to think about.
Totally. And the crazy part is the software doing it doesn't even need to log a single keystroke to know, exactly what you're working
Right.
on.
They've evolved way past that.
Exactly. So, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're mapping out the rapidly evolving and, let's be honest, somewhat unsettling world of time tracking and activity monitoring software.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. And we have a super dense stack of sources today. It's anchored by this really comprehensive write.as document that breaks down 6 major tracking tools.
And there's also that really fascinating AI chat log in there, right?
Yes. The chat log where someone is basically fact-checking the highly specific and I think slightly misunderstood capabilities of a tool called littlebird.ai.
That part is super interesting.
It really is. So our mission for you today is to unpack exactly what these tools can see on your machine, how they process your data at the operating system level, and how the industry is trying to navigate this incredibly microscopic line between helpful productivity analysis and invasive surveillance.
Because that line is getting blurrier every day.
Oh, totally. Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get into the nuanced AI-driven tools, we need to establish the baseline of the current market.
Right, the extremes.
Exactly. We have to look at the extreme end of the spectrum. The tools built for absolute, uncompromising employer visibility.
Yeah, to understand the modern landscape, you really have to look at the brute force architecture of well, what we'd call the surveillance tier.
The heavy hitters.
Right. The source material highlights Controlio and Terramind as heavyweights here. So starting with Controlio, which runs about $6.67 per user per month.
Pretty cheap, actually.
It is.
Okay.
But it caught my attention because its defining feature is a live desktop view.
Yeah, I was looking at the technical specs for Controlio in the source, and that live desktop view really stands out. I mean, this isn't a tool taking a screenshot every 10 minutes and batch uploading it to a server.
No, not at all.
A manager is literally watching your mouse move and your text appear in real time.
Yeah.
Completely unabstracted.
Just staring over your digital shoulder.
Exactly. It crosses the psychological line from, tracking to direct physical observation. Plus, it features a stealth mode and a raw keystroke logger.
Right. And then Terramind pushes that envelope even further.
Oh, yeah.
At $14 per user per month, the source actually classifies it as a security powerhouse. It utilizes continuous screen session recording.
Wait, continue, like full video.
Full video. The system is capturing a high-definition video feed of the entire desktop environment. It allows administrators to literally scrub backward through an employee's day minute by minute.
Wow.
But it pairs that video with real-time optical character recognition, or OCR.
Okay, so it's reading the screen.
Exactly. If the OCR engine detects a string of text that looks like, say, a credit card number or a proprietary client name being moved into an unauthorized application, like your personal webmail, it can execute an automated policy block instantly.
Oh, wow. So it's actively policing the data flow, not just passively recording it.
Precisely.
But let's look at the alternatives the source provides. Because there are tools like ActiveTrack, which has a free tier and goes up to $10 a month, and Insightful at $8 a month.
Right, the lighter ones.
Yeah, the documentation frames these as productivity-focused rather than security-focused. They ditch the continuous video and the keystroke logging and rely instead on app categorization and time and app metrics.
Periodic screenshots, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it sounds like the difference between having a security guard standing directly over your shoulder with a camcorder versus a manager just glancing at your timesheet and the apps you have open.
That's a good way to put it.
But I have to push back on this framing a bit. Categorizing apps still feels like surveillance from an end-user perspective. I mean, do employees actually know this is happening? What about consent?
Well, that's a huge point.
Right. And who actually defines what a productive application is? If I spend 45 minutes in a Slack channel, is that productive team collaboration? Or am I just complaining about a project with a coworker?
Yeah, that ambiguity is the primary failure point of metadata-only tracking.
Exactly.
Because a tool like ActiveTrack, it can see the executable name dash like slack.egex, but it completely lacks the qualitative context to know the value of that time.
It's just a label.
Right. And what's fascinating here is how the legal context completely dictates the deployment of these varying architectures.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Under the European Union's GDPR and increasingly in various U.S. states, deploying highly invasive mechanisms, specifically those raw keystroke loggers and continuous video capture we talked about, requires explicit opt-in consent from the employee.
So you can't just sneak it onto their machine.
Exactly. Deploying them in a stealth mode is legally radioactive in those jurisdictions.
Legally radioactive. I like that. And I guess that legal friction explains why the market is fracturing. A company doesn't want to deal with the massive compliance headache of, storing European keystrokes on a U.S. server.
Oh, it's a nightmare. And there's also a massive infrastructure cost to think about.
Like server space.
Yeah. Capturing, compressing, transmitting, and storing 8 hours of high-definition video per day per employee. That requires monumental cloud storage and bandwidth.
I can't even imagine the AWS bill for that.
It's huge. These heavy surveillance tools drain local system resources and bloat IT budgets. It basically forces companies to ask if the data they are gathering is actually worth the overhead.
Which brings us to a completely different use case in the source material.
Right.
If those enterprise tools answer the question, what is my employee doing right now? How do we answer the question, how did I actually spend my own time today without sacrificing our privacy?
Right, without volunteering your data to a corporate dashboard.
Exactly.
So the source transitions to what we call local first tools. These are really designed as personal data vaults.
Okay, I like the sound of a vault.
First up is MemTime at $14 a month. It operates on a philosophy of continuous automatic capture, but the key architectural difference is that the database lives entirely locally on your device.
Meaning it doesn't go to the cloud.
Exactly. It runs silently in the background, logs your applications, and creates a searchable timeline. But crucially, there is absolutely zero cloud synchronization.
Okay, so what does this all mean? Like, for the listener?
Well, it gets even more secure. The source follows MemTime up with ActivityWatch, which takes that local-first philosophy to the absolute extreme.
I saw that one. It's completely free, right?
Completely free, open source, and it runs on practically everything. Windows, Mac, Linux, Android.
Nice.
It tracks app and website usage locally, has absolute zero cloud dependency, and it's completely transparent. Like, it literally cannot run in stealth mode. The daemon is always visible to the user.
So you own the data completely. If you're using ActivityWatch, you're the only one seeing the data.
Exactly.
But I have to ask, from a technical standpoint, is it actually useful? If it's just telling me, hey, you had Visual Studio Code open for 4 hours, it feels like a digital diary missing the actual entries.
Yeah, it's a fair criticism.
It knows I was in the building, but has no idea what room I was in or what I was doing.
And the technical mechanism behind ActivityWatch explains that exact blindness. It relies exclusively on operating system event logging.
Event logging, okay.
Yeah. ActivityWatch doesn't actually see your screen at all. Instead, it just periodically polls the operating system's window manager.
So it's just asking the OS what's happening.
Pretty much. On a Windows machine, for instance, it hooks into the Win32 API to ask, hey, which window currently has user focus? It records the name of the executable and the string of text in the Windows. That is the absolute limit of its visibility. It has absolutely no idea what is rendering inside the application frame. It knows you had Excel open, but it guarantees total privacy precisely because it is blind to the context.
Okay, so we have a pretty massive gap in the market here.
A huge gap.
On one side, we have Terramind recording gigabytes of video and hoarding this massive database of keystrokes.
Yeah.
On the other side, we have ActivityWatch, which just politely asks the operating system what the name of the active window is.
Right. Total extremes.
This perfectly bridges us into the central debate within our source material, the AI middle ground.
Yes, the littlebird.ai discussion.
Exactly. Because what happens when an AI tool claims it can read your screen without spying on your keystrokes?
It sounds impossible at first.
It does.
Right.
The write.as document includes this highly detailed chat log where a user is basically interrogating an AI assistant about the technical mechanics of a tool called littlebird.ai.
Yeah, the user's trying to figure out how this software can claim to provide deep behavioral analytics and burnout detection without acting like spyware.
Right. And I read through that chat log, and the initial assumption from the AI assistant was that littlebird.ai must be using a keystroke logger to gather its data.
Grouping it in with tools like Controlio.
Exactly. But the user pushes back, citing Littlebird's actual documentation. The user points out that Littlebird absolutely does not log keystrokes. Instead, it uses OCR.
Right. The AI actually had to issue a correction because that distinction is so critical.
Yeah, it completely changes the game.
It does. Littlebird.ai represents a completely different approach to data ingestion. It basically abandons input tracking, like what your fingers are doing, in favor of output analysis, what the computer is rendering back to you.
But how does that actually work at the OS level? Because if it's not recording my keystrokes and it's not saving a video file to a server, how does the OCR engine get the data?
Well, to understand this, you have to look at how modern operating systems handle graphics.
Okay.
Operating systems like macOS use really strict application sandboxing. An application in the background cannot simply look at the memory space of the application in the foreground.
Right, that would be a huge security flaw.
Exactly. So to bypass this, Littlebird.ai has to request accessibility permissions on a Mac or screen recording permissions on Windows.
Okay, I've seen those top-ups.
Yeah. This pierces the sandbox, allowing the tool to capture the raw frame buffer. The frame buffer is just the temporary memory space where the OS holds the pixel data right before it pushes it to your monitor.
Okay, so it's grabbing the raw image data straight from the graphics pipeline.
Exactly. It grabs that frame buffer and holds it in RAM. It then runs an OCR algorithm over that image data in memory to extract the visible text.
Like reading the paragraphs in a Google Doc or the numbers in an Excel cell.
Exactly, or the subject lines in your email client. And then, crucially, the software immediately dumps the image from RAM.
It just deletes it.
Instantly.
Yeah.
It is never written to a local hard drive, and it is never transmitted over the network. Only the extracted text metadata is saved to understand the context of the workflow.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. So Littlebird.ai is essentially like a speed reader who walks into your office, looks over your shoulder, memorizes every single word on your monitors, and then instantly self-destructs their own visual memory.
That is a perfect analogy, yeah.
Right. They retain the total semantic context of what you are working on, but there is absolutely zero visual evidence left behind for a manager to go back and look at.
The visual evidence ceases to exist milliseconds after it is processed.
That's wild.
And the source document highlights this as a highly plausible standard for privacy-first AI architecture. By running ephemeral OCR, processing the image in memory and immediately discarding it, the tool generates highly intelligent data without generating a toxic surveillance archive.
But wait, why engineer something that complex? Writing a keystroke logger is incredibly simple from a programming perspective.
Oh, incredibly simple.
So why build a complex memory buffering OCR engine just to figure out what someone is typing?
Well, the ultimate insight here is that corporate privacy is no longer just an HR ethics debate. It's a hard cybersecurity strategy.
What do you mean?
Think about it. A database full of raw keystrokes is a catastrophic liability. If you log keystrokes, you are inevitably logging personal passwords, banking details, private messages, and sensitive internal credentials.
Oh, right. You're creating a master honeypot.
Exactly. If that database is breached, the company is liable for an unimaginable amount of compromised personal and corporate data.
That makes total sense.
So by relying entirely on ephemeral OCR, a tool like Littlebird.ai completely immunizes the company against that specific vector of data breach. It sheds the liability while keeping the analytics.
Wow. You are tracking the artifact of the work rather than the mechanical input of the worker.
And you are only tracking what is visible on the screen at that specific moment, not the invisible background inputs.
Makes sense. So having mapped out these underlying mechanisms, like the continuous video rendering of Terramind, the ephemeral RAM-based OCR of Littlebird.ai, and the blind API polling of ActivityWatch, the source leaves us with a framework for how a user or a manager should actually choose.
Right, how to actually navigate this. The source synthesizes this into 3 distinct tiers of privacy, which I think is the most practical way to evaluate any software in this space.
Let's hear them.
First, you have the least private tier, occupied by tools like Terramind and Controlio.
The heavyweights.
Yeah. The core operating principle here is basically, I have saved video of your screen and recorded every single key you pressed.
Rough.
Very.
Yeah.
This architecture is strictly reserved for high-security environments, like defense contractors or financial institutions, where legal compliance and the forensic investigation of data leaks override all privacy concerns.
Right. So in that tier, you're essentially trading all personal autonomy for maximum forensic oversight.
Exactly. Then you move up to the medium private tier, which is the space Littlebird.ai is trying to define. The operating principle there is, I read the text inside your application to understand your context and feed behavioral AI models, but I do not save the visual image, and I am entirely blind to your keystrokes.
Which feels like a solid compromise.
It is. It's best for managers wanting productivity oversight and AI analytics without full Big Brother surveillance or carrying that toxic liability.
And finally, the third tier.
The most private tier, championed by ActivityWatch. The operating principle is simply, I know you have an application open, but I have absolutely zero technical capability to see what is inside it.
Right.
This is best for pure, uncompromising personal self-reflection and total data ownership, accepting the trade-off that the resulting data will be highly superficial.
So I want you, the listener, to consider your own machine for a second. If you are installing one of these on your own machine today, which of those trade-offs are you making?
It's a tough goal.
It really is. Do you want the AI to deeply understand your context so it can actually assist you, even if that means letting it scan your screen buffer? Or do you lock down the vault with a tool like ActivityWatch, accepting that the analytics will be dumb, but knowing the data is unequivocally yours?
Yeah, it is a stark choice when you actually look at the underlying mechanics.
Definitely.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the defining variable across all three of these tiers is transparency.
How so?
Well, the source explicitly points out that tools utilizing OCR, like littlebird.ai, technically can operate in stealth mode. The system daemon can run invisibly, scanning the screen buffer without throwing any UI alerts to the user.
Ah, so the capability to hide is still there.
Right. ActivityWatch, conversely, makes transparency a hard-coded feature. It's completely transparent by design. It cannot hide.
So the software architecture matters, but the deployment configuration matters just as much.
Exactly. The source actually provides a vital piece of diagnostic advice for anyone evaluating these tools.
What's that?
Always search the software's privacy policy and technical documentation for the specific phrase keystroke logging or input recording.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. If those mechanisms are present, you are dealing with a Tier 1 high-liability surveillance tool. If they're explicitly excluded, you are likely dealing with either contextual OCR or simple event polling. Understanding the mechanism is really the only way to know what you are actually dealing with.
That's incredibly practical advice. To summarize today's deep dive, the landscape of activity monitoring is clearly not just a binary switch between spying and not spying.
Not at all.
It is a highly complex architectural spectrum. On one end, you have continuous video capture and keystroke logging designed for strict security. In the middle, you have ephemeral, memory-based OCR that attempts to generate AI context without creating a prominent visual record.
And on the far end, you have local-first API polling that trades context for total privacy.
Beautifully summarized.
As we wrap up, I do want to leave you with a thought regarding the trajectory of the OCR and AI technologies we've explored today.
Well, lay it on us.
Well, we have watched these tools evolve rapidly, right? From simply asking the OS what app is open, to pulling the frame buffer and reading the actual text to gauge workflow and detect burnout.
Right, the evolution has been fast.
The next logical step of this architecture isn't just passive monitoring, it's predictive intervention.
Wait, predictive intervention, what do you mean by that?
Consider the capabilities. If an AI model is constantly reading your screen buffer, it learns your exact behavioral patterns. It knows the sequence of actions you take before you successfully complete a task, and it knows the visual cues that precede a period of distraction.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, the jump from observation to intervention is incredibly small. If an AI can read your screen and learn your habits perfectly, how long until the software stops just tracking your workday and starts actively trying to do your work for you?
Or subtly manipulating your workflow before you even realize you're distracted.
Exactly. Dimming distracting windows, preemptively fetching documents it knows you're about to search for, or redirecting your attention.
That is a staggering implication. I mean, we began this discussion thinking about the physical visibility of a traditional office, like a manager walking past your desk.
Right, the old way.
But physical observation is fundamentally limited by human biology and attention spans. The digital architecture we've unpacked today never blinks. It processes every frame, reads every word in memory, and immediately adapts.
It's always watching, even if it's immediately forgetting.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the mechanics of the software you rely on, and always keep asking the right questions about where and how your data is being processed.